End of last year, when this QK75 was released, I was confused why they labeled this thing an entry board. There was nothing entry about this at all. The finishing was top-notch, the specs were top-notch, the design was top-notch. There was really nothing entry about this keyboard. Well, except that the pricing wasn't crazy like actual premium keyboards. Now, fast forward a few months and this comes out, right? The QK80. Now, if this is an entry board, I don't even know what the difference between entry and premium is anymore. The line is starting to blur, and I'm not sure we could ever unblur it again. Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is Scott K. So, if you recall, I made a video on the Zoom TKL last year and said there really isn't much more you'll be getting from like a keyboard perspective, right? By buying anything more expensive. Only thing is that something more expensive may have maybe slightly better finish, more exuberant designs maybe? But then Qwertykeys dropped their latest, the QK80. They call this an entry lineup of boards, but there really isn't anything entry about this. I know, this is like the story of Qwertykeys, right? Like since the QK65. Come in with boards that punch way above its weight class. And guess what? That story continues with the QK80. So let's get started. So the QK80 is actually the TKL version of the popular QK series from Qwertykeys. So what do you get with the QK80 versus the QK75, other than the extra 5%, which is incorrect anyways? So, well, similar to the QK75, the QK80 comes with an extra box that says, well, accessories, in addition to the main components. So what's in the accessories box? Well, stuff like the coiled USB cable, screwdriver, then a bunch of little stuff to build a keyboard, like stabs and screws and gaskets and stuff like that, right? Then you also got this. What is this? Well, it's a customizable decorative badging, which I will show you later where these go. Then the main components, right? First up is the PCB. Well, the PCB is very similar to what you have seen on the QK75. It's matte black, it's hot swap PCB, it's got the standard KO hot swap sockets behind it, and also has the similar wave style flex cuts like what you have seen in some of the QK boards as well already. And this PCB is also 1.2mm, which means it's on the thinner type. And yes, the similar grommet style gaskets are also present here. But this time you get two different types. A black one is actually made up of a much harder material, while the gray ones are much softer. So based on which one of these you decide to use, you'll end up modifying the typing feel as well as the sound. Based on material specifications, you'll obviously get more flex with the softer gray grommets, but at the same time get a more muted sound signature versus like the harder black ones, right? The fit, they like kind of fit right into the little tabs like this. And yes, it fits on the PCB, which means that technically you can do a plateless mount with the QK80 also like the QK75. Man, the customization is endless. One last thing about this PCB is that it's also wireless capable, both Bluetooth and 2.4 GHz wireless. In the daughter board, the battery and all is connected through a single connection, which is very nice. Now, from a plate perspective, there are 4 different types and I received all of them. So starting with the stiffest one, let's say, you got the aluminum plate with the flex cuts, and then you also got the FR4 plate with the flex cuts as well. These two plates are very similar to each other. Then the palm plate and also the PC plate, which are also very similar to each other. The softer plates do not have flex cuts, but it really isn't necessary because they are softer. And yes, it's not unusual now to see a foam pack with a keyboard. Actually, it's abnormal nowadays to not see one these days. So you got the case foam, then you got the mid-plate foam that goes between the plate and the PCB, and finally the ubiquitous PE foam that Qwertykeys and Owlstabs are known for. What's interesting about the PE foam is that out of all the different manufacturers, QK and Owlstabs still probably does it best with just how it fits so well. But one thing I would recommend is trimming out the PE foam under where the stabs go. If you don't, the stabs like kind of feel mushy, and the sound, in my opinion, is not the best. It just kind of sounds a little weird. Finally, let's move on to the case. So if you recall, QK provides many different case colors and weight colors and finishes. The one I have is like this cream off beige colorway along with a blasted gold inner weight and this gorgeous matte blasted chroma lower weight. The case design is simple but just enough flair. In fact, it's like QK started with the QK75 design and then decided to add a little bit more detail into it to make it into the QK80. You also got this nice little lighting accent that is borrowed straight from the higher end Owlstabs boards. Hence the reason why I'm starting to say that the line between the entry and premium space is really starting to blur. Now, remember those little metal badges? Yep, this is where it goes. There's this little space right in the middle where the lower weight kind of allows for the badge just to drop in and stick on through the magnets. This way, you can swap the badges to the design you really wish as well. Overall, for an entry board, this thing is very detailed, so I am impressed so far. With the top half removed, you can see the lower case better. Under this nice inner weight is hiding the daughter board, as well as the 2 battery packs equaling about 4400 milliamp hours of battery capacity. Nice thing is that everything just plugs into the center daughter board, and you don't have cables going all over the place, right? One for each battery and stuff like that. Typically, these are the details that make up more premium boards, so it really is great to see it in this QK80. Alright, for the first build, I'm going to do it without any PE foam so you can see how this actually sounds like without the marbly sound modifier you see in most QK and Owlstabs boards with that PE foam. I decided to also use the mid-plate foam since the QK80 doesn't really use standoffs, and the plate foam, it just makes switch insertion much easier. For switches, QK also sent me a set of their new Owlstabs London Fog switches. They have a lovely colorway with the housing consisting of mostly PC and with UPE stems, but what actually surprised me the most about these was how smooth these were. I received the factory lubed versions and I can tell you, these are crazy smooth. Along with all of this, I decided to use the aluminum plate to create the most classic sound profile, and I did use the lower case foam as well since I felt that it sounded cleaner with it. For stabs, I used a set of lubed Owlstabs, and for this first build, I decided to use the harder black grommets. So in my opinion, I think it turned out pretty amazing. Now for keycaps. Given the beige colorway of the case, I decided to grab a set of DCX Jasmine keycaps from Drop. When I actually first saw the case, I literally thought, I know the perfect keycap set for this one. The colors of the alphas on the Jasmine set are a perfect match for the QK80's overall finish color. Overall, I think this came out looking so perfectly matched. And the keyboard complete looks like this. Looks really good, don't you think? So how does this feel? Well, even with the stiff black grommets, this thing is super flexible. It's like the combination of the thinner PCB, the flex cuts, and the gasket design that allows this to really flex well. Now, what about the sound? Well, let's find out. So what do you think? I think overall, even without using the PE foam, the keyboard can stand on its own in terms of sound. With the aluminum plate, it has a nice mid-range kind of sound. It's not too clacky or thocky as you call it. One thing I did notice was that the spacebar did sound a little bit empty. Perhaps because it's a larger 7U spacebar, perhaps because I didn't use the mid-plate foam under the spacebar. I would probably recommend using it for this board, honestly. Now I thought, if this keyboard is so good, if it's so premium already, how does it compare to this? Yes, the legendary Mr. Suit. It's from the same company technically, right? But this thing has achieved endgame status. Can this entry QK80 compete with its beautiful premium brother? And yes, this Mr. Suit is the one that my cat wife built, and yes, I did rebuild it. No worries. In order to create the most level playing ground, I decided to use the PE foam in this time with the QK80 since that's what's in the Mr. Suit as well. Plus, I decided to swap out the aluminum plate with the palm plate and use a set of Tecsee long pole switches also, specifically actually a set of Hamster switches. This way, the two keyboards, the QK80 as well as the Mr. Suit, have pretty much the same specifications. Finally, this time, I decided to also use the softer gray grommets to help mimic the gasket socks that were used on the Mr. Suit as well. I think the colorway looks pretty good, no? Let's do a quick side-by-side sound comparison between these two, shall we? So what do you think? Both boards are TKL. Both boards are made by QK Owlstabs. Both boards have similar component options. They're both wearing double-shot ABS keycaps as well. So both boards, in my opinion, sound pretty good. But to my ears, Mr. Suit still has that edge. It has a more pleasing, cleaner, and complex sound profile. I feel the QK80 does sound deeper, but overall, it does sound less sophisticated, at least to my ears. I guess this is where like the premium board kind of pulls forward a little bit, but then again, it is the Mr. Suit, right? So after all this, what is my final thought? I mean, come on. Did you guys expect any less from Qwertykeys again? Since like the QK65 days, every board they put out has been bangers, and every board that comes out after another has been even better. And that story continues here with the QK80. However, I do feel this, the QK80 is not leaps and bounds better versus the QK75 from a keyboarding perspective. There isn't some revolutionary new thing here. The sound profile is similar, rather, yeah, it's very similar. Rather, the two of them are nearly identical other than the form factor maybe, and it's not really a bad thing. However, the major difference, in my opinion, between the QK75 and the QK80 is the amount of detail they put into the QK80. It does surpass the QK75. I mean, stuff like the lower weight badge, right? And the RGB accent lighting. It gives that QK80 that slight edge from a premium board perspective. And you know what? Before I leave you, the elephant in the room. I know you guys are gonna ask me this. The QK80 or the Zoom TKL? Well, for me, I do prefer the QK series of boards. It's not like the flex or the sound or the little badges and stuff like that. It's actually the whole package. When you do a side-by-side comparison, the QK80 just feels like a more refined board. That's just my opinion, but if it's my money, I would throw it at the QK80. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll have more content for you in the future. Thank you.